So, hello everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Ascensiva Media, where powerful conversations with inspiring voices awaken minds, foster meaningful connections, and inspire transformation. There are some people whose careers can be described in a single sentence. Then there are others whose lives unfold in chapters that almost feel like different books. And our guest today, Mr. Satish Shah, belongs to that second category. He's a journalist, an entrepreneur, investor, education advocate, and recipient of the Indo-American Arts Council Lifetime Achievement Award. Satish Shah's remarkable journey has crossed journalism, technology, entrepreneurship, philanthropy, and education, always driven by one central question: how do we build a better society? And he began his career with leading Hindi publications, including Jansatta of the Indian Express Group, where he developed a deep understanding of how ideas shape society. And his journey later expanded into technology and education innovation, including his work with One Laptop Per Child, strengthening his belief that technology can transform learning, but only when it is supported by the right educational ecosystem. And at the heart of his work is a simple yet powerful conviction: lasting transformation begins with education. And this philosophy is at the center of his book, The Full Plate, which challenges us to see education not as a single solution, but as a complete ecosystem where schools, teachers, families, communities, values, and opportunities all come together to unlock human potential. And the book contributes to the broader conversation on development and human capability, explored by thinkers such as Amartya Sen, or Dara Jamalou, James Robinson, Abhijit Banerjee, Esther Duflo, while offering a practical perspective on turning ideas into meaningful action. Now, to me, what makes his vision especially compelling is that it extends far beyond ideas. And through his work with Vidya Bharati Foundation of America, he supports the mission of one of the world's largest volunteer-driven education movements, bringing together educators, philanthropists, and community leaders through initiatives such as the Foundation's annual Education Gala. And we will also look about this year's upcoming gala later in our conversation, why it matters, the impact it hopes to create, and how it is bringing together a community committed to transforming lives through education. So what makes Satish Jha's journey remarkable is not simply the many roles he has held, but the purpose that connects them all: building a better future through education, ideas, institutions, innovation, and ultimately through people.
Welcome to Sanjeeva Media, where stories awaken and voices become legacy. Podcast with Ashita Shekhar.
So today's conversation is not simply about a distinguished career. It is about thought, it is about evolution, and a lifelong commitment to creating meaningful impact. So it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Mr. Satish Jha to Sanjeeva Media. Satish ji, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Satish ji, our audience is looking forward to learning not just about the milestones in your journey, but also about the ideas and experiences that have shaped your thinking over the years. So I would like to begin not with your career, but with you. Because before all the titles, as a journalist, as an editor, entrepreneur, investor, education advocate, author, there's a person. There's a person whose thinking has evolved over decades. So when you look back at your journey, what has remained constant through all the different roles you have played? And do you see those roles as separate careers or simply different expressions of the same purpose?
I think your questions are answering for me as well.
Fantastic. Okay, it
Effectively,
all
what
boils back
happens,
down to that deeper purpose. Okay, I got it.
what happens
Yeah.
is that knowing yourself is a much more difficult project. So it's easy for all of us to keep picking up pieces, do this, do that, this task, that becomes a purpose of most people's lives, because knowing yourself is very difficult. So we don't even go in that direction. So if you begin to know yourself in the context of larger universe or world or society or whichever aspect of it you belong to, it changes the way you see things. then you don't plan a career. Then you don't go to school to get a degree or a certificate. So my journey was, I don't know why it was so, because sometimes we don't know why we do things. And I would say that it's very clear in my own journey that I did not know why I was doing things, except there was one basic concern. I don't do things the way everyone else does. I do things by asking, why am I doing it first? And
Mhm.
that kept changing me from the age of 5 until I became at 22, 23. I became part of the editorial, you can say, the leadership team of Indian Express. And I was hardly 22, 23 years old. And I began understanding what learning is, a journey. It never becomes that you've learned everything as such. Every day you learn something. So I pivoting from one place to another, going from one city to another. My father was in government service, so
Mhm.
I went to Keval towns, which is began in Lucknow, Kanpur, Allahabad, Varanasi, then Agra, then Delhi, and then overseas, etc. So my journey was, I think every place you move to changes your perspective. I think people in Indian defense services, they create really great Indians, partly because their transfers in life, they help them educate their children in multiple schools. And so every child of a defense officer would have gone to at least 3 to 4 schools in 3 to 4 environments. That changes people's perspective. Every new
Right.
place gives you new questions, new challenges. And in my case, I went through multiple places. I think that changed the desire to respond to a new situation, new place, new people, and constantly reading with that, it changes something in you as well. So I would say there's something innate in a person, something which is environmental, something which is with a thought, and something which, everyone you meet, they keep changing your perspective. So many things happen in this journey. What was important was uh, I was questioning. I wasn't accepting things easily. And if something is normal, accepted as normal, that was not the path I wanted to take. And I'm not trying to be cliched about it. I would not go to Robert Frost and others, etc. They were great poets, and they, captured the spirit of that. My point is, my journey was by questioning, by if something comes very easily, why is it that easy? Something difficult, why is this difficult? Why it's not happening? And that's how things kept evolving.
So you began your career in journalism and editorial work with leading Hindi publications, including Jansata of the Indian Express Group. What did journalism teach you? Not just about reporting events, but about understanding people and the way societies think.
Well, I think journalism is a great teacher in several ways, partly because it's a place you never get bored at. So much is happening. All the information comes to you. You have to process the information. And I founded Jansatta. I started it. I gave it a name. Uh, I was very young, but I had a conversation with the chairman of Indian Express, Ramnath Goenkaji, and somehow he kept asking me, what are you trying to say? And in the result, finally, I said, I'm trying to say, we don't have a Hindi newspaper. He said, and so how does it impact? I said, if I'm going to speak on behalf of the citizens of the country and they don't understand English and they don't read me, so I'm going to be a nation of only a few who read English. So if we expand our readership to people who actually are unable to read English and they can now read Hindi and other languages, then we are communicating what the government does, what the government is thinking, or what they are supposed to be expecting from the government and so on and so forth. That will change the
Mhm.
conversation. Anyway, he picked it up and he said, fine, start. And then I had to give it a name, and I said Lok Satta because I worked with Jayaprakash Narayan, was a great leader before emergency around that point in time. And they said Lok Satta you can't get because we already have another paper in Marathi, Lok Satta. I said then Jan Satta. So they apparently had some registered the name long, long time back in Delhi. So it became very easy to take that name. Jan Satta also came from the people's power, which is a Jayaprakash Narayan's slogan. So we began, and then Prabhas Joshi, who had spent 25 years, he came along. So two of us started the journey. And in the very first year, he succeeded so well. We had 100,000 circulation, which was apparently told, I was told that I indirectly wrote about it. Never before in the history of journalism, any newspaper has gone from zero to 100,000 circulation in 6 months. So that's what happened. And it became, in terms of language and coverage, a gold standard of Hindi journalism. So that's what happened. And when it happened, people created to, people who were the founding team, and we all got some share of it. But I came at the same time within the very first 8, 9 months to Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy in Medford, then moved to Kennedy School. So my learning, you can say, landscape expanded beyond what it used to be, and that changed quite a few things. When I went back, I became editor of the Demand, which used to be
Mhm.
considered at that time the gold standard of magazine journalism. People used to say, why can't we have magazine like the Demand in English?
Mhm.
And that was the question, a refrain, you can say, in the minds of lots of thinking people. And he used to go hot off the press with Prime Minister. So it had a certain positioning. And as suddenly I found I was 26 years old and became a senator. So that was a huge opportunity, and
Mhm.
it made me think about issues in a different way. Now you suddenly have a responsibility. What you think has to be not only thought through but presented in a way that the world
Mhm.
thinks it was at the right place or respectable for a forum like that too. And you begin to think along. You're still very young, but you're trying to
Yeah.
figure out how to measure up to the expectations the society has from you by giving it the role it gave you. So that's how I began the next one. Dilman was a Times of India group company. So Jansatta, I initially started Financial Express, then Indian Express business editor, then founded Jansatta along with blessings of Ramnath ji and Prabhas Joshi came along. And then I moved to Times of India. After that, I had some worked with Manmohan Singh in Geneva.
Mhm.
He was a Secretary General of South Commission. So I was hanging around. He said, "What are you doing? So why don't you work with me?" He made me his advisor. And well, I got very bored because he was such a wonderful man. There was not much to do in South Commission actually. So I wrote a couple of
Mhm.
policy papers, and then I did. Incidentally, I found a place where a new school was being built for managers of tomorrow. That was called Institute Thesios, Theseus, a Greek word, which was
Mhm.
funded by MIT Sloan and INSEAD in France, Politecnico di Milano in Italy, Hewlett Packard, France Telecom, another dozen big companies came together to fund it. There were 18 of us in
Mhm.
the charter batch. I was the charter batch of that, which has now become EDHEC, EDHEC, which basically means École, whatever, Haute École Commerciale. So that's EDHEC in France. That's where I picked up what you call management, and what they call it MBA degree, but more than degree, I look at this way: degree is about education, but what you learn is what's important. I think all 18 of us learned the same things very differently, and I became a worldwide head technology for division of Hoffmann La Roche in Basel, Switzerland. That's where I learned what management is. Before that, everything seemed, whatever you did was things are happening. Now you're looking at a much more diverse and a complex organization with 140 countries. You're meeting people with different culture and trying to understand why they do these things. And one big learning I must tell you, when we did things in Europe, the question was, how would people respond to it? When I went back to India again, and I was running a small consulting firm called James Martin Company, I was chairman of that. And then when I met people, they said, no, no, don't worry about that. You tell us and we'll make them believe. We make them try. So gap was huge. In India, it was easy for them to say, you give us solution, we will drive it through. In Europe, they said, no, no, we have to see how people are going to accept it first. So that was a huge, big learning that in developing countries, we don't think of people first. In Europe, they couldn't do it unless people accepted it. And same is true for US as well. So affluent societies, they have to care for the people they have. Their voice matters. In weaker societies, I mean, which are not as affluent or poorer societies or developing ones, that challenge is there. They're unable to give everyone the same dignity and respect they deserve, basically. Yeah.
That's a
So that was a long
very,
journey.
very interesting perspective to how you connect your experiences across different fields with a common thread, which I believe is understanding people, asking deeper questions, and creating meaningful impact. And it seems that journalism became more than a profession for you. It became a way of observing the world and understanding the forces shaping society, and that naturally leads to a deeper curiosity, not just to asking what is happening or why it is happening, but how people are responding to it.